Hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for the warm welcome, Wesley. Listen to a few things I got to say. I've been doing this design thing for a minute now, and I've had many experiences. So feel free to ask questions at any point. Doesn't have to be just about drawing, although that will be the focus of tonight's lecture. Sorry, I was taking some tea out here, so you may have seen some steam. Anyhow, so like Wesley said, I'm Spencer, and let's get started. I'm going to switch over to Zoom here, screen share. Okay. All right, so to kick things off tonight and just give you an idea of what we'll be doing. So typically I'll give a presentation a little bit about visual communication, what that is, and some of my thoughts and feelings there as it pertains to design. And I assume that most, if not everyone in the audience tonight is familiar with industrial design, or at the very least design as a concept. So if something doesn't make sense, feel free to interrupt and ask away, ask questions. So I'll give this presentation and then we're just going to jump into kind of an impromptu improvised presentation. So I'll be depending on you guys for suggestions and questions and so forth. All right. So the title of the presentation is Between the Thought and the Thing is a Sketch. And the idea here being that as designers, we often will things into existence that begin in our heads. And the connective tissue, if you will, or part of that, an important part of that process for me has been sketching. In this case, I'll be showing you some visual communication techniques as it pertains to drawing with a stylus, a pen, paper, things like that. But really a sketch can be a lot of different things. As Wesley mentioned, I started idsketching.com. This was a website that I ran back in 2008, a long time ago. If you have questions about that whole story, I'm happy to tell you, but my focus these days has been sketch day. And the idea there being, hey, if I can do a sketch every day, I can at least maintain some level of skill that I find appropriate. When I transitioned to being a professional working in the workforce, I found that as my sketching became less assignment oriented, it became less frequent, and I wanted to maintain that skill level. So I decided to do what follow the advice of many who have set goals. One of those bits of advice is make yourself accountable. And what better way to be accountable than, and to never frankly stop, than make yourself accountable to the entire internet. So that's what I decided to do in starting Sketch a Day. So I do sketch something every day, even if I don't post it every day. I do sketch something every day because I want to maintain those skills. And you can usually find me online at sketchaday.com or some variant thereof. Most of the time, or many times, I am streaming live on my YouTube channel as well, sketchaday.com, so you guys can check that out. I've done a few of these presentations. I probably should update the slide because it's probably twice as many now. But education is something I'm extremely passionate about. And as my career has progressed, I've found a greater need and interest in sharing my knowledge with others. So I try to do that and try to do that on a regular cadence as a means of outreach and just support and helping out students in ways that I wasn't able to be, or able to benefit from, I should say, when I was a student. So like I said, here's my YouTube channel, sketchaday.com. You can check it out, subscribe, all that good stuff, maximum plugs. But more importantly, I want this to be kind of a resource and repository for information for anyone who's interested in visual communication stuff. So you can check out the YouTube channel there. And then in addition to that, if you have specific questions about something that's tough to draw, I might touch on something that I covered today. You can visit my website, sketchaday.com. If you specifically click on videos, you will have an extensive list of videos, hours and hours and hours of content to kind of help you through some of those tough problems and challenges. There's also stuff to pick up if you're interested in supporting, and also answers about even the materials I use. So things like the markers, pencils, even the camera setup I'm using for this Zoom. So But I did want to talk about a few other things about myself. I actually added this to the presentation last minute, as I was talking with Wesley before the start. But I do want to point out that while I'm known for sketching, I do a lot more than that. And one of my favorite things to do is to tinker. I believe that failure is a chance to learn, and every experiment provides a learning opportunity, whether it's the grand experiment of life or a subset of that, you being in school or going even smaller, your assignment itself. And so in my spare time, like I said, I like to tinker, and this is a side project of mine that I do with my sister, who is also a designer. She's a UX designer and UI designer as well, fine artist. Anyhow, so we have this project 50/50 design. And one of the projects I was able to do was a little experiment that I came up with last year called Very Salt Lake. I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's kind of a play on words and a shortening of the word vessel, VSL. And the idea behind this was to reclaim some products that people would often discard, but going beyond your typical upcycling project or anything like that. It really started with a curiosity about cutting reclaimed bottles. So I found that I was collecting lots of glass bottles. Utah in particular is not good about recycling, unfortunately. So I wanted to take this opportunity to make something of value. And so I came up with a series of continuing experiments, started with home decor items, vessels that would store objects, which turned into me asking a question. What if I put a light inside? What would that look like? And I kind of focused on a few materials, copper, silica for one. Okay. So glass, silica, cutting glass, carbon, wood, basically cutting wood to create functional pieces of the lamps or the lighting objects, I should say, and lime as well, or cement. So it all begins with exploration, of course, which is what we're going to talk about today. So did a lot of sketch exploration, a lot of tinkering, breaking things, experimentation, trying to figure out how to wire something up, what the aesthetic presentation of bulbs would be. Pretty quickly, my home was taken over by these artifacts and their pieces, and acquired things like 3D printers so I could make components for these lamps. And it was a really fun exercise and fun experience. So essentially came up with a few categories, and I'll breeze through these fairly quickly and we'll get to the meat of the presentation. But if you do want to take your time, you can go to that website, 5050.design, and check that out. So the first set I came up with, not in any sort of chronological order, but the first set I presented were these blocks. So finding or even reclaiming these chunks of wood, which were cutoffs that I acquired from a local lumber mill. Again, taking things that might be discarded and giving them a new purpose. So 3D printing the components, being thoughtful about strain relief and where the cord would go and so forth. All right. Had to teach myself a lot of stuff. Ended up buying a CNC router as well to help streamline the process. So a lot of this was designed in Autodesk Fusion 360, which some of you are familiar with, hopefully, and was able to use the CAM functionality in the app to manufacture these on a small scale. So in terms of design philosophy, I consider this to be a design for mass appreciation rather than mass consumption. They are, at least in this manifestation or iteration, individually created one-offs that kind of are dependent on the bottle. They're dependent on the bottle of raw materials I'm able to acquire and my time and so forth. So I think it's an attempt to reclaim a bit of this purposefulness when it comes to design and individual, I guess a pushback against mass production, right? Making things feel a bit more bespoke and not bespoke in the extreme sense, but more so that this is something that can be appreciated en masse, right? Approachable, understandable, but not necessarily meant to be consumed and discarded. So the next series was a tabletop series, a little bit larger in scale, and had a lot of fun with this. I was able to turn, like I said at the beginning, turn some failures into successes. This is an encased tabletop lamp that I came up with. It could also be a pendant, but decided to have kind of this tabletop presentation, very simple geometric construction for the frame, a frame that would encase. And I love when products have a story, quite literally, not just some made up tale, but like, here's what happened and here's why it is the way it is. So I was experimenting, and my son happened to knock over this prototype. The glass breaks. I'm like, oh no. um I didn't freak out too much, because instead of freaking out, I saw an opportunity. Hey, what if I juxtaposed the erratic nature of this crack, treated it so people don't hurt themselves, right? So dipped it in some rubber and then encased it in this wood frame. And in that experimentation, was able to find a successful combination that I think had a distinct look and presentation to it. So that was a fun experiment. There's some of the details there. Continued that, had another bottle that I was cutting that broke, and was able to kind of experiment there and try a few different things in terms of details, assembly, and so forth. So that was a pretty fun activity. There's another tabletop presentation. And one of the things you'll find, I think, in design is that sometimes you set out with a plan, something goes sideways, you don't know how it's going to go. I think good designers have a tolerance for ambiguity, but also a high tolerance for change. And this is an instance where I had a concept, and then the implementation of that concept ended up being a functional benefit. So here, for example, on the cantilevered arm of this lamp, we have this loop, and this loop was facilitated by these catches or runners, if you will, that the cord was threaded through, but the tension inherent to this assembly was able to allow the light itself to be adjusted up or down. So that ended up being a functional plus for this concept. Had to learn a lot of stuff along the way. How do I cast concrete? How do I do it in a way that I can finish? What are my inspirations going to be? And somewhat limited by raw material. I had specific colors, yes, but what came out of that was, I think, a color scheme that was authentic and honest to the materials, but also complementary to the other materials I was using. As you can see here, with the 3D printed plastic being red or yellow, and the cords that I was able to choose for the lamps as well. All right, so there's some more details there. And this ended up being one of my favorites of the bunch. So continuing that exploration, wanted to come up with some floor models as well. So here's a few. And in creating a family, I tried to pull cues and inspiration from other items in the collection. So as to create a sense of unity and cohesiveness across the line. So while I pulled inspiration from, say, Japanese architecture or Scandinavian design, it was meant to be consistent, coherent because of the use of material, scale, gesture, and so forth. All right, even things like fasteners. And again, there's some of the material play. The cousin to the other cantilevered light. And again, you can see that cable being routed through, and that ended up just being a nice little functional touch so that the lights could be adjusted. So the culmination of all this, I mean, this was all during COVID. And for many of us, the last year has been hectic, chaotic, presented us with opportunities for learning, but change. Some people embraced it, some were frustrated by it. I was frustrated by some things, but also saw this as an opportunity to try some different things. And so this project was one of those. But I felt as though my work was siloed a bit. I had consultants along the way. And by that, I don't mean people that I paid to look at my work, but more so, hey, I've got this design contemporary. What do you think of this? What could I do better? Here's my thought and so forth. So beyond that, though, I wanted to expose the work to the public. So I actually put together a plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a show. But at the time, no one really knew if we could congregate indoors and what that meant. This was July 2020. So I put together a show and decided to hold it outside my home on my driveway. And, again, as a designer, I think it's important to always think creatively, find opportunities where other people may find frustration. And so it ended up being a fantastic night. It was something that was able to bring the community together in not so much a large scale. I invited people that I knew. Of course, we wanted to keep the numbers lower, but it ended up being a fantastic experience. So I was able to show these off and sell quite a few, which is always nice, I should say. So just wanted to share that with you guys as a little bit of something else that I do as a creator and an educator, and that's what I fancy myself these days. So transitioning into our main presentation here, I know Wesley's seen a big chunk of this before, but we're going to talk about visual language, because visual communication is something that I think consistently cuts across different disciplines within the field of design. Okay, so a little bit of backstory about me. I went to a school here in Utah, and I was actually studying math. Ultimately had a friend who was studying industrial design, thought this is interesting, let's give it a try. And on my first day of school, I was given this quote: "A person who cannot communicate their ideas is on the same plane as one who has no ideas." And that really impacted me. It really struck a chord within me. And I thought, man, I need to be able to communicate my ideas, or there's no point to this whole design thing. And if you think about the concept of, not even concept, but the actual construct of language, it's really made up of structured symbols with implied meanings. And we all agree on these meanings, things like the alphabet has phonetic value. So we have an alphabet, and this alphabet is made up of symbols, characters, and so forth. And if you look at them in a visual sense, you'll see that there's lines, there's curves, there's positive, negative space, but all these letters or characters can be combined to form things called words. And these words have a symbolic meaning attached to them, right? Even the concept of fruit. If I were to say that, you might imagine some things. You might imagine your favorite fruit. If I were to say to you red, chances are, hopefully, you understand what that means, what part of the electromagnetic spectrum is represented by that phrase. But even then, I can't specifically tell you this is the red I'm thinking of without showing you. So in that sense, visual communication is really the clearest means of expressing a concept or idea. Here's what it is. You see this with video, you see this with photography, sculpture, prototyping. Here is what I'm dreaming of, or here is a symbol, or here's this movie that encapsulates this very difficult concept in life and presents it to you in a way that's digestible and that I can compart to others. It's a pretty powerful thing. Universally, however, I find that visual communication is just a beautiful thing. You can distill concepts down to imagery that I think is relatable and understandable. This one's a little bit outdated, I will say, as our perceptions and understanding of human nature and gender and sexuality is changing, but universally, we have used a symbol historically to represent a certain concept, okay? There's also things like this. If I were to show you this anywhere in the world, you could safely assume it means no walking your dog on this curb. Just kidding. It means no smoking. So the idea that visual communication can really encapsulate a concept, and no matter what language you speak, if you were to see it, you could understand what that concept is. And so it does cross cultures and boundaries and disciplines. There are times in my professional career where I've been able to sit with people from another discipline or job function or vertical in a company, and without possessing the depth of knowledge and even lingo that they have, visually expressing an idea and presenting it in a way that's digestible by all parties is a really powerful thing. You could have a designer, an engineer, prototyper, business, product manager, all in the same setting. You go up to a whiteboard and you can draw your concept. And I don't mean necessarily a hardware concept or the product, but more so, can I distill this conversation down to something visual that all parties can agree represents the concept? And that's a powerful thing to do. And this is just an example I like to share that no matter where you go in the world, with one exception, so it turns out Japan, if you were to see a red octagon with a white boundary, and even if you couldn't read the characters in the middle of the sign, you could safely assume that it means stop. Okay. Again, another example of the power of visual communication. So much like spoken language, written language, we have a visual alphabet, and the building blocks of what we do, we'll be using these tonight. Shapes, positive, negative space, line weight, different types of line, gesture, construction, hidden, implied lines. There might be the way a reflection is shown based on the contrast in the lines and the sharpness, crispness, and so forth. Or it might be perspective. All these things can be used to essentially create a compelling presentation of a concept or idea, depending on if it's super clean and tight or if it's a bit looser. It all comes with certain feelings, assumptions, and so forth. Visuals can be loud, though. They can be loud, evocative, powerful. One thing I didn't mention is I'm from Jamaica. That's where I grew up. And one of the things I saw very commonly that I think made an impression on me was just the most gorgeous sunsets. And I, in my best language, I might try to describe it to you as something like a tropical sunset with shades of the most sublime hues that I've ever seen. And I could add some color. Maybe there's pinks and purples and golds, and you can see the silhouettes of trees. And as I say these things, you might start to get a fuzzy picture of what it is I actually mean. But it's not until I share that picture with you that you then gain an ability to empathize as that you weren't able to before, and truly understand what my experience was. So by that, visuals are powerful. They can transport us to another place, change our perspective, and help us find our frame of reference. They can show us beauty at a different scale, like this macro photography. They can preserve moments in history, right? So even if I wasn't alive at this time, we can preserve the emotion in a moment. And speaking of emotion, they can truly capture these poignant moments that we have as humans together. Here's a father who is the victim of some atrocities, lost his hands, and is being helped by the son. And just the power and intensity in the eyes is just so moving. All right. So if you think about visual communication as a whole, sketching is really a small subset of that. I would posit. So then why sketch? And particularly today, I find, I've used this presentation in many contexts and over the years and tweaked and modified things. And I find that, especially today, sketching seems to be one of those things that, students or professionals are like, you don't need to sketch. You don't need to sketch. It's not important. But as I said at the beginning, between the thought and the thing is a sketch. And there's many ways to get to that thing. You could have a thought and you could jump into CAD, or you could put on your VR helmet. That's going to cost some money, right? For a good CAD box, 3,000 or so. VR helmet, another $500 or so. Model making, it's like, I could model make or prototype my idea. And that's not to say these activities don't have a place. It's not what I'm saying, but more so that individually they are not enough. It's not enough to just have a paper model. It's not enough to sit down and start doing CAD. And so I found personally, and your mileage may vary, that in my career, sketching has been that reliable means of capturing a concept, of harnessing my creativity and expressing things in a way that helps me connect with other people. A great way to have a good idea is have a lot of them. And as it turns out, sketching is cheap, it's low commitment, and you can pump out tons of ideas at the expense of some time, some effort, some practice, and so forth. But you can put out a lot of ideas. Okay, you can fill a page and fill the imaginations of others. So when it comes to design, the type of sketching I talk about is called rapid visualization. I didn't come up with this term, but really it's just a set of drawing methods in which you use simple, efficient drawing methods to communicate real objects and concepts. But ultimately, it's really just about abstracting reality, simplifying it, and layering in some style. It might be the way you draw your line, it might be the way you apply your color, and so forth. But all these things come together to communicate concepts quickly, efficiently, and clearly, hopefully. And there's different contexts. There's different contexts, different approaches that we can all take. Currently in my career, I tend to have a very loose style when it comes to sketching, but the goal is still to abstract reality, but make things believable and inject some emotion into that sketch. So leaning on my math background, if I were to map out where rapid visualization lies in the realm of visual communication, it's really kind of in this upper left quadrant. To counter that or give you an opposite, something that is complex and very real might be, illustration or even fine arts, hyper realism when it comes to drawing, or even photography or 3D rendering. They all have their place, they all have their use, but they're certainly not abstract or simple. Okay. And they may take time, the learning curve may be higher, and so forth. So when we're talking about when I'm talking about rapid visualization, it's important to remember we're not throwing everything out the window as we simplify and abstract reality. There's composition, contrast, perspective, line weight, color, shadow, and form. But ultimately, it's about simplifying, simplifying, simplifying. Now, you may be taking a design course and your professor is teaching you things, and you may think of yourself as a certain thing, but really you're a salesperson. And what I mean to say is we all have something to offer, whether it's our skills, our ideas, abilities. And much like this fine gentleman that you may have run into, or at least he represents an archetypal figure that we come across in life, whether you're buying a car, home, or whatever. I've come across salespeople, I've worked with salespeople, and I found a few things in common with these salespeople. I found that in about 30 seconds, they tend to know whether you're going to buy it or not. And I feel as though good designers are good salespeople in the sense that salespeople have an excellent command of language. They know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. Okay. As a designer, do you know what to do, how to do it, and how to present it? Are those things you're thinking about? Are you thinking about your audience? A salesperson can adapt their approach to the audience that they're presenting to and use empathy and capture their imagination, see a problem, see an opportunity, take advantage of that. And in as much as a salesperson is using language to persuade others and create opportunities, our language as designers is our talents and abilities, the things that we present and we draw on. One key ability is to visually communicate those ideas, however you choose to do it. I'm going to choose sketching tonight, but it's really important. So let's dive into the process a little bit. When I was younger, I thought that, I'm just going to sit down and sketch that one idea and it's going to be perfect. But really, it's about committing to iteration. There is a certain inefficiency, in drawing, but that's okay. That's okay, because it's in that exploration that sometimes we find the answer. Our brains kind of sometimes think of fuzzy ideas, or at least this is how it feels for me. I think of something might be a little fuzzy and I draw it, and then I compare that emotion, that vision with what I've done. Okay, it's a bit like this, where as I'm sketching, I'm thinking, okay, what's the idea? Can I draw it? I'm going to draw a little bit. I'm going to evaluate, take a look at it, compare it with my brain, and go, okay, cool. We're on point, or wow, that was a pile of trash. I'm going to throw it away and start over. And that's okay. It's just a part of the process of having a conversation with your sketch or the paper. So again, iteration is the name of the game. There is a process, there is a rationale to how products are even put together. So anything created by a human, for the most part, has some some bit of logic to it, some approach, and it might be big grounded in rational geometry. There might be other approaches that you can take to understand, sketch, and present that thing. But in the case of this old webcam concept here, it might be, okay, there's a central axis, revolved form, there's a cutout for a lens, there's some mount for where this might sit on a laptop lid, for example. There's a process involved. Okay. So again, it's not that you look at a sketch and you go, oh wow, it's done, it's finished, perfect. There's a process. Even this rendering here, you know, it takes time. You can see building these things up, lots of lines, figuring things out, and then going through a process of cleaning things up, applying some color eventually, and so forth to bring this whole thing to life. I think it's almost done, so time that incorrectly. But you can kind of see the process there, right? So step by step, rough it out, clean it up, all that good stuff. Pretty simple approach. Once you discover what the rationale, the structure of something is, it's really easy to then approach sketching that thing out. All right, so there we go. Cool. So the master of any other language, master of visual communication takes practice, right? You're not, hopefully, well, I don't know, maybe you're going to leave the session today and be like, yes, I'm awesome now, I can do anything. But it takes dedicated effort and consistent practice. So I want you guys to remember that. What makes a good sketch page, though? Sketch page is a tool that we often use as designers to show the process of coming up with an idea. And a few important components of that are form. So what is the object? What does it do? Well, form, what is the object? Function, what does the object do? So maybe we have a PC case that opens up, and there might be some modular component to it. Context, where does this thing live? Okay, why does this deserve to exist? And what does this mean in the context of a human? Where am I going to put it? Where's it going to live? So forth. All right, so we may sketch a vignette of that to present our concept. And then detail, what are the little interaction points that matter? Maybe it's something decorative, things like that. Can I zoom in and show those things? And as we put those all together, we create a sketch page. Okay, a sketch page that tells a story of form, function, context, and detail. Here's another example: solar powered backpack, form, function, context, and detail. Now this doesn't have to be in every single sketch that you do. Sometimes I'll show form and function, what something's made up of, or it might be form and context. Here's a human to show scale. Or it might be all those things: form, function, context, and some details for this microwave food tray. Now, sketching as a whole, even as a subset of visual communication, there are different approaches to sketching that you can take. And for designers, I think it's important to pick the right sketch for the right time. Sometimes you may be doing what's called a personal communication sketch. That's okay. I don't ever expect to show something like this to a client, but it's more meant for me to document my process, my ideas, and to maybe work something out, some challenge that I might have with a project. I might be sitting in a dentist office sketching up coffee maker concepts, or just merely exploring the gesture of an automobile and what that means. Okay, so a couple examples of personal communication sketches. Then we have the thinking or exploratory sketch, which is meant to show an iterative development of an idea. So you may start with a theme in mind or a construction approach or whatever starting point based on your project criteria, and show versions of those ideas in an iterative sense. And typically composing these with different views, different materials, and so forth, but trying to show that they're at least cohesive in some way. Next, we have the functional or technical sketch, which, as the name implies, is about how something works. It might be how it fits together, like so, or hypothetically, what the exploded view of a robot's head might look like, or simply, hey, here's this connector that just goes in and out, and some options there. A shopping trolley with exploded view, or it might be something like, hey, what is it like, or what's the use of this project, as or product rather, if I were using this thing, how might my hand interact with it? Presentation sketches are next, which are meant to be a little bit more cleaned up. I'm actually working on some of these this week for a client, so pretty common, typical approach here, which is to say, now I've done my thinking, I've done my exploring, we've picked an idea, and now I want to show an approximation of what this could be, leveraging some emotion, some drama, if you will, in presenting that concept as well. It doesn't all have to be digital. You can do these with markers and pens, although a combination of analog and digital is also a successful way to go about it. There's a couple examples here. And lastly, we have the emotive sketch. So meant to kind of be like the opener for a presentation is the way I think of these. I don't do these as much these days. And if I do them, they tend to be standalone sketches that I might do as a commission for someone. But here's an example of an emotive sketch that uses an unfamiliar point of view, movement, and a certain coloring style to express and evoke a certain feeling in the viewer. There's another example. Sometimes you might venture into doing something that has an ethereal quality to it. It's more painterly. And another example that I didn't do personally, but I love because it captures the feeling of the object without the detail of the object. So one of the things I usually get asked when I do these presentations, or if I travel or have conversations, is, how do you get better? And unfortunately, there's no magic pen, because if I were to pick an arbitrary number, it's really a matter of, hey, talent's 10% of the whole thing. I mean, remember, I was a math major when I started design, so I've come a long way since then. But it really comes down to just practice, practice, practice. Whether you do it every day or you do it at whatever interval of your choice, it's about how much effort you put in, because over time you'll find that sketching or doing anything, whether you're lifting weights, I like to work out every day, for example, it's unreal to expect that you're going to see those results after your first workout or after the first sketch. It takes some time, and your body needs to rest in as much as your brain needs to rest. And I don't understand the psychology or the neuroscience behind this, but I can only impart to you my lived experience, which is to say that when practicing sketching, I don't see those results immediately. It's a bit like plugging along and consistently practicing, and somehow eventually your brain just connects it all, and before you know it, you're riding this wave of awesome to the next skill level. But you will hit a point where you plateau, where you feel like you've topped out at your skill level. It's just important to keep pushing, because you'll hit that point again where you feel that increase. Now, this graph is a little deceptive, because in life, we don't what's the word? We don't directly proportionally increase in our skill or ability like this, but it's just meant to convey that if you push through those hard times where you're not seeing the skill improvement, you will see it eventually. I promise you that. Because otherwise, this is the key to being frustrated, which is to say, I'm going to practice inconsistently and not take what I'm doing seriously. And so you may see increases, but not as much as the other individual who is practicing really hard. One of the challenges I like to give myself is the 500-page challenge. And before the presentation started, I ran to grab my current stack, because I've been working on this again, about halfway done. So the idea is to finish 500 pages of paper in a month, and it's really hard. You have to do about 15 to 17 pages a day of sketching. You're going to run out of ideas. You're going to feel exhausted. Before you know it, you'll have, what's that? Let's see. You'll have over an inch stacked up of paper, probably more like 2 inches. But I have noticed when I do this exercise, this is the third time I'm going through it completely, is that I do see that increase of skill at the end, as opposed to, it condenses a lot of effort into a small amount of time. So there you go, about 35, uh, 35 millimeters of paper right there. But more importantly, keep a sketchbook. Sketchbook's an opportunity for you to have free open playground, if you will, to practice, to make mistakes, mess up, whatever, just your chill space. You don't have to turn it in. You don't even have to show it to anyone. It can really be a small notebook. A lot of people like to sketch digitally. We might do some of that today. Got my iPad ready to go. But it's just important to have, I guess you can think of it like a safe space for exploration and experimentation for yourself. Relax and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be all product related. You can sketch weird stuff like I do in your sketchbook. Play around, try new things, experiment a little bit. Because if you're getting too comfortable, I think it's important to always shake things up. Try something new, whether it's a different type of pen, different brand, different type of paper, perspective, or whatnot. Pardon me. Try different things. All right. That's going to help you see things from a different perspective, but also present you with opportunities to learn as well. It's also important to draw everywhere. When I was living in San Francisco, I would draw on the train, the bus, anywhere I could. And I've told this story before, but so I'm an introvert. I at the time wasn't very confident, very shy, socially awkward, and not so much anymore, but then I was. But I love drawing people, and I absolutely hated the feeling of dread and terror I would get when I would sit down and draw people, because I wanted reference, I wanted to practice, and inevitably what would happen is you'd be drawing someone on the train or the bus, and you look up and you realize they see you drawing them. It's just really awkward. Time stands still, and it's just the intensity builds until one of you breaks gaze. So I had this crazy idea, not crazy, but I thought it was a great idea. If they don't see me, then it's not so awkward. So I got like this huge oversized hoodie and some aviator glasses, and I would put those on and pull the hoodie down and just sit there and draw. It was really creepy, but I got to draw people, draw everywhere. Since then, I've enjoyed plein air drawing. These are some drawings I did in Bamberg, Germany. Super, super fun. So just important to take your sketchbook everywhere so that you can do two things, which is draw from observation and draw from imagination. Yes, it's a play on words, but the idea is you got to feed your brain so you have something to pull from. If someone said to me, "Hey, Spencer, I need you to draw a bulldozer," I probably would be able to draw one now because I've drawn one before. But if they're like, "Hey, I need you to draw a duck-billed platypus," I might not know where to start. How many digits does this thing have? How does the bill transition into the head? I don't know. So that's where reference comes in, or at the very least, having that prior knowledge or experience. So super important to draw from observation so you can draw from imagination. So again, the key to getting better, consistent work over time. So here's some examples of some of my first sketches that I like to show, particularly for a few reasons. In this instance, if you look at the date, it says December 17th, 2004. This is a long time ago. This is when I was in college, right? And I love drawing robots. I still do. And somehow, about 5 days later, 5 days later, I drew this robot. Now, I don't know what happened between the first sketch and the second sketch, but I would argue that the second sketch seems quite a bit better. Now, there is still improvement to be made. Over the years, things have gotten better, right? As I've practiced and better, as I was then paid to do these things, and even better, and so forth. So it's through practice that we're able to see those improvements. It's just not going to come to you unless you actually try. Here's one of my first automobiles I drew, the boxcar, if you will. This was not 5 days later, but still, after consistent practice and effort, you can see these got a lot better. Okay. It's also important to find your style. It's a lot like finding your voice, finding your purpose, finding your place in this madness called life. Design's super competitive, you know, and if you can figure out a way to find your inspiration and have that either move you to work hard or seeing things you can learn from other people's work, I think it's super important. I just love the diversity of these sketches. For example, we've got some Scott Robertson there, some Sasha Silipanov. I think he's at Kosnig right now. He's the angry car designer. We've got Damon Moran. I forgot who the robot is on the bottom, and Kim Jung-hee. But some people who've been tremendously inspirational for me personally over the years. If you're trying to find your own style, you can always start by picking a reliable tool that's consistent for you. So for me, it happens to be the Papermate Flare pen. It's just one that I've always loved and used, and I've kind of been branching out, and I use different pens now. It's less about what I draw with, more so these days, and or rather has more so these days to do with how I draw rather than what I'm drawing with. All right. So there is no magic pen, but there are those favorites I have. Put your personality into your work. I think because design is competitive, because you do want to stand out, and I've hired many designers over the years. It's about showing your personality. I mean, I I guess it's one of my frustrations, the homogenization of content, particularly online. It's something I see students struggle with, like, um, absent pen and paper. It's hard to really stake a claim and say, this is me, because when the process becomes so easy, it becomes kind of vanilla at the same time, and you're kind of just chasing this asymptote, or rather marching toward this point of convergence of having your stuff look like everyone else's. So sketching can help set your stuff apart, can help show your thinking, and can, I think, show your personality a bit. And maybe you figured out ways to do that in your other work. Kudos and thumbs up to you if you have, but I think it's important to do that. Break some rules and have some fun with it. I'll go over some principles today. Like I said, I sketch very loosely these days, so I'm quite used to breaking rules and having fun while I do it. But whether it's bleeding your background into the foreground, or trying some sort of content that's a bit different, or just experimenting, break those rules. So I like this example, not because I did it, but more so it's leveraging a technique that was used in old school car designing quite a bit, which is burying the wheels into the ground plane of the scene quite a bit. And it created this perception or illusion of, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, sleekness, or a streamlined approach to the design. But it's fantastical. It's not grounded in reality at all, and it's clearly breaking rules. So now we come full circle. Thank you for sitting through the presentation. Again, I'm going to be depending on you guys for questions and challenges or things you want to see. But a person who cannot communicate their ideas is on the same plane as one who has no ideas. That hit me then, and it's stuck with me throughout the years. And I've tried to push myself to always be a great communicator. Design fundamentally is, for me, so much of it is communication. It's listening to humans, listening to clients, listening to others, and interpreting what you hear and producing something to communicate back, whether that's visually, verbally, or in some other capacity. So much of design is about communication. And the better you can communicate, the better salesperson you'll be. And the more you know, the better the flow will be. All right, so first thing I want to show you is just warm-ups. So a couple things, how I hold my pen. Maybe this will make a difference for you, maybe not. It may feel very uncomfortable, but I tend to hold my pen about halfway up the barrel. Okay, so if I'm holding a pen in a writing stance, it may feel comfortable, but from my perspective here, see if I can show you guys. Yeah, you can probably see that. So if I'm off camera here looking this way, I can't really see the rest of the line. I can see it if I look at the overhead camera, but if I'm just sitting and drawing, it's really hard to see. So by moving my hand back, I'm actually able to now see all the way down my page, right? So it's a lot more comfortable. I'm using a Papermate Flare pen, and then, so grip is one thing. The other part of technique has to do with drawing with your shoulder. So my shoulder is a pivot, and there we go, and my elbow. So my elbow's moving and my shoulder, but not my wrist so much. I do break that rule from time to time, particularly as I am drawing something smaller, but for the most part, it's about drawing with my shoulder. And there's a couple of things inherent to how I draw my lines. So here, for example, hopefully you can kind of see there's a little bit of a thick to thin or light to thick, and that's just a factor of speed. So ramping up and slowing down is going to give you just a nice thick to thin to thick, right? So that expression is a part of how I sketch. If you're trying to work on precision, you can put some dots on the page on either side. I'm just using regular printer paper today. Maybe put some dots on the page like so. Ghost or hover over the paper and then draw your line. The trick here is to not focus on the middle of the line, but rather focus on where you're going. And that will help you with your accuracy. So when I was learning to draw, I would do the dot exercise. Now I just kind of do lines like so. Like I said, I tend to sketch a lot looser, more loosely, I should say, than I used to. I'm just going to move this computer out of the way. I have way too many computing devices. I was counting the other day. You know, if you count a phone, tablet as a computer, how many do you have in your home? I had 14. It's crazy. All right. So next, I'm going to do some circles. All right. So just like that. Drawing with my shoulder. And Wesley, feel free to record this. I'm not recording right now. But I don't think you are either. Or are you?
Cool. Yeah, I will do it.
All right. So just draw some circles here. The idea here being we just want to warm up and get proportion down. So I'm trying to think if there is a good one here I can point out. Not yet. So I probably need to keep going a bit. But usually what I try to do is shoot for something like this one where there's very little overlap or mistakes, and proportionally we're starting to feel, you know, equidistant from a center. And that's when I know, that's when I can kind of tell, all right, you're warming up. All right. So next one I like to do is, and I'll send you scans of all these as well, or digital files should we get there. So next one I like to do is ellipses. All right. So an ellipse is a circle in perspective. Many of you know that. Some of you may not. So much like the mouth of this coffee cup from the top, coffee cup looks like that. From the front, looks like a straight line. Okay. So if I drop this coffee cup, we're going to start, I'm going to cover my face so the camera will focus on the cup. If I drop this, you can see, or even rotate it, I'm getting an ellipse, and that ellipse tends to be open a certain amount based on the angle relative to the camera lens. Okay, so it's a lot like that. And that's called the degree of an ellipse. I got a question there about favorite pens. I will give you a link. It's all on my website. Check that out. Just a link to all the stuff I use. So what I'm going to do here in this warm-up exercise is create a procession or progression of ellipses that increase in degree. I'm not so much tied to the precision of the ellipse beyond the width here, but I want to get a nice progression down the page. And I feel like I ramped up a little too quick here. So let's try this again. Maybe something like so. I'll just kind of keep increasing these as we go. All right, something like that. Just kind of play with it till you get a nice progression for your warm-up. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to use these lines I sketched on the page as the central axis of our ellipses. So in other words, I could have sketched an ellipse like so, where this minor axis is collinear with this line that I drew. That's another way to do it. Right? But we'll go back to this. So it may seem boring, like, oh my gosh, Spencer, why are we doing this ellipse thing? This is annoying. But you can do a lot of things with ellipses. All right, and I'll show you one here in just a sec. And finish this row up. All right, so I'm waiting to see product idea suggestions that you would like to see in the chat. So feel free to drop those. But for now, I'm just going to pick, say, that ellipse there or that one. We'll see. Yeah, maybe I'll go with that one. And then I'm going to go with that one right there. And let's add a couple of lines here. Like so. The line right there. Come down on the side. Little curvy curve. Line to the front. How about we make this an Audi? Nice big grill. Some light there. All right, and just like that, you guys were sketching cars and you had no idea. So don't underestimate the value in your warm-up exercises and your practice. Because really it's an opportunity for you to put or lay the foundation for things like this. All right, getting your principles down. And now we have a simple car. All right, so we got, let's see, whoa, lawn flamingo, plane, bipedal robot, mouse, sneakers. Mouse and sneakers are good examples because they're not, well, a mouse can be structured. Coffee maker is a structured thing. So I think I'll focus on the coffee maker, mouse, and sneakers. Now that'll, let's see, 924. Yeah, we've got time to do it. So I'll do a quick marker sketch, then we'll do another pen sketch and transition into digital. But there you go, quick car concept. Super simple, hopefully. All right, perspective of a car. If that's something you want to see, you can always go to that website, sketchaday.com/videos. There's a full section on transportation, tons of videos for you to watch if you're curious about that. Drawing cars is really hard though. So usually when I set out to design something, what I try to do is think of the object in its essential views. So that's going to be things like your top, front, side views, typically. Okay. So something like a computer mouse. Okay. And for purposes of simplicity, what I like to do when it comes to designing something is think in terms of fairly rational geometry. So what is a, what's a way to break something down? You know, even as I look at this mug, for example, as I look at this mug, right, it's a cylinder and I have a handle that is planar, almost like a sweep. It has a cross section to it, but I can understand it. Even something that is organic, there are ways that we can understand it, in as much as my mic is a cylinder or this glass is a revolved form if you will, with a cross section. So try and break things down. When in doubt, rough it out, break things down. Try and understand what you're seeing or what you're thinking about. Okay. There is rationale. It's particularly with product design. You know, there's rationale. Even if you're thinking or feeling something, you can start somewhere. So in the case of a mouse, let's say this is a top view. Typically, you're going to end up with something elliptical, even as I put my mouse on screen for you to see there, right? Kind of has that gesture, that shape. So we can start there. We can modify that. If I want to square off the end for some reason, I can do that like so. I can do the same thing toward the front. All right, maybe this is my main form. I don't know. Maybe that's where we're starting. All right. So now if I want to do a side view, right, I can look at this mouse and it's like, oh, this is kind of like a curve, but it's more like two curves that meet. This curve has a different radius than this curve right there. It's almost like two circles, if you will, meeting up. It's almost like these two circles. One has a center here and the other might have a center here. So you can kind of think of things that way, and it makes it simpler. Now, I don't always draw this out. This is more for your instruction, but you can kind of see the geometry and the relationship there. So most things have some rationale to them, is my point. So here on the side, you can kind of do the same thing. All right, this line is actually kind of interesting on this mouse. Now I've got to think, what does that actually mean? You know, what does that mean for my mouse? So I'm going to keep that line. We'd have some sort of wheel or scroll mechanism. Maybe it's not a wheel, maybe it's a touchpad. I'm going to go with a wheel though. Sketch that in. And then maybe some sort of front view. So just extending these lines over like so. It's almost like taking this mouse. Here it is on its side. We can take it and we can rotate it. Okay. See if I can do this reasonably well. So there's the mouse, and now I can rotate it and you can see, oh wow, there's the flat on the bottom. You can see how the shape changes. So from the front view here now, I've got an opportunity to say, okay, maybe it looks something like so. All right, my wheel, just extend this line over. My wheel's going to be somewhere here. Okay, maybe I do have that creased point in the middle. That was kind of cool. And now I get to decide, you know, what's happening here. Is this actually a line that comes across? Is it curved? If it's curved, it might look something like this from the side. You get to decide as the designer. Okay. But I think I am going to curve it a little bit. And then maybe have either some pattern on the bottom or some material break, but we'll see. Not entirely sure there yet, but I at least have a plan. I have a plan about my idea. I've got a top, I've got a side and front view or end. Cool. So using that, I can say, all right, let's take a look at the shape of these planes. And this is going to get a little bit messy, but hopefully will be instructive for you. Now, again, I don't draw like this all the time. Like, hey, if I'm drawing a concept, I don't sit and draw these planes, but I'm doing this for your benefit. So let's imagine there's a rectangle that bounds this mouse drawing, at least our top view there. Okay. We also have a rectangle that bounds our side view like so. I think I'm going to grab a purple, something like that. And we also have a rectangle like so. Well, this rectangle is particularly interesting because really it's almost as if we're looking, if there's an eyeball here, we're looking at the mouse from this direction, right? And we're able to see these limit points on the side. But what if I could cut through the mouse at regular intervals? It gets really interesting, right? What would those cross sections look like? It's kind of like a loaf of bread. If you were to take a loaf of bread and separate it out, you get individual slices, and each slice has a character, and you can kind of see when you put those back together, you get the whole loaf, right? So we're gonna treat this mouse like a loaf of bread. So let's start with our bottom plane. All right, so I'm going to start with a plane, something like this, that proportionally represents the mouse. Now, I'm not going to delve into perspective unless you guys have specific questions about perspective, because that could be a 5-hour workshop. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is let's divide this square or rectangle, sorry, into half. All right, this is a little bit of the magic of perspective. Notice how this distance differs from the distance moving back. What I've essentially done is this trick where if I want to find the midpoint in a rectangle, I can just draw an X corner to corner, right? A to D. That's what we did there. A, D. And look at how the distance differs. That's correct, proper perspective, right? If the things closer to you appear bigger, chances are you're doing it the right way. Okay, so the top of my mouse is kind of nondescript. I'm going to cheat a little bit. This is kind of weird. Well, we'll see. Should I cheat? Try and decide. No, I'm going to go for it. So let's start with the shape of the base of the mouse. Now, I do have a little bit of an undercut here, because if I'm looking straight down, I'm going to see this point and this point on the sides, but I really wouldn't see under here. Okay, so how about we draw a rectangle just offset a little bit from the outside, right? So this is the real bottom of the mouse, and now I'm just going to draw a curve like so, and a curve like so. Okay, if I want to project up, we can do that as well, and draw another plane that would kind of represent that midpoint, if you will, where we're now getting our undercut. Up like that. So over and down. So now on this plane, okay, if I go and find, this is going to be messy, like I said, find that midpoint, okay, and do my curves. All right, and now I have an opportunity to just connect these curves. Now, this is if you were just doing a straight up wire drawing, right? There's nothing to this surface, if you will, no changes or undulation. We're just connecting corners. We have two shapes, one here on the bottom, and just connecting those. What I can do, however, is look at the middle of the middle profile, right? We had those two curves that kind of transition into each other. So I'm going to actually draw a plane now in the middle. Okay, and this is going to represent the height of my mouse. Let's find the middle point. It's going to be about here. I know my curve starts to transition about there. So I'm going to draw a nice little curve down like so. All right, and I think I decided that the apex of the mouse would be a nice crisp line. Okay, well, what if, say, you know, on this point, we brought this back a little bit. We had a little bit of a curve. You can see that going back there. Looks like much of our mouse is going to be obscured. You can kind of see how this is starting to come together, right? Just going to pull that line back. And here we're going to have this weird, funky surface on the back where this comes to a point. All right. In addition to that, we also have in our side profile a slight curve on the side of the mouse. So how do you do that? How do you get that slight curve? Well, that's where now we would come in, and I'm just going to arbitrarily pick some intervals here, but really it's about trying to create that curve here. And you can see I've raised this point up to there, this point to there. If we want a midpoint up here, we could do that. And there you get that curve. Okay. Like so. It's a funky view, but that would be the shape of the curve. All right. This is something I learned in car design, because in car design, and frankly in shoe design too, what often happens is you design something in one view and you think, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be so awesome. And then you implement it and you think, oh, that's weird. I've got this weird low point right here. And you kind of have to fix things, and that's okay. right? As you go, and you tend to rotate things. And this is where I was kind of saying sketching isn't enough alone, but if you go about it the right way, you can get a reasonably good approximation of what your final outcome may be, and kind of vet your design direction before committing all your resources and time to it. So now let's do our wheel. I'm just going to cut a little slot here. For the wheel itself, what you're actually dealing with is a square in perspective. Now, how are we on time? Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole mechanics of this. I do have a video on my website about ellipses, okay, in perspective, but there are ways to figure out what this ellipse would look like in perspective and actually calculate it, but it's going to look something like that. Just trust me on it. Check out the videos section on my website. You'll see a video specifically on ellipses and how to find all these points. So if I were to now take my pen, and all of this you could do with a gray pen. I use colors to more so show the distinct differences in each step. You can see the base plate right there. But now I can kind of come in and get some final lines here, particularly if there's, say, a separation for the button assembly. All right, I may want to get that in, get this crease down the middle, like so. It's a really weird computer mouse, but we're going to go with it. This is, again, an example where I said, sometimes I cheat and I use my wrist. That was an example. Particularly where if you're doing a small curve, like if I was doing a small curve like this, I'm essentially using the pad of my hand here as a pivot to draw a nice curve. So that's what that's about. All right, we can just wrap that like so. Notice that I'm rotating my paper as well. You don't want to have to contort your body to draw the way the paper wants you to draw, but rather just position the paper in a comfortable spot, wherever works for you. And that's going to be a much better proposition. I actually like this line, so I'm going to use this as maybe some sort of crease on the side of the mouse. I like that shape. So now we have an outline, we have a contour line, we have some surface lines in place. Contour lines are a way of showing what's happening with your form, commonly understood in design sketches, right? Now I can get my wheel here. I'll add some texture. Like so. I feel like it's sticking out a little too much, but I'm going to roll with it. I'll probably part this out too in terms of the aesthetic. You're welcome. Probably part this out a little bit, just to kind of break up the shape and the form. Maybe texture indicate where this main button assembly is. Like I said, it's kind of wide in the front. So even as I was if I was modifying this design and say I was going to do this on a new piece of paper, I might just bring this in a bit, tuck that in, we can make some changes. This would actually be a good example to kind of resketch. So a couple things I like to say are, when in doubt, rough it out. Okay, when in doubt, rough it out. Take some time, figure out what you're actually designing and sketch it out. And then when you're ready, you can do your nice sketch on top. So I'm doing what's called resketching. Okay, so I'm not actually tracing here, but rather drawing with my underlay as a guide. Okay, so I'm going to use this as a nice clean sketch that we can use digitally in just a sec. All right, but I'm taking into account this design change I made right there. I'm going to try and make the front of the mouse just a little bit more tucked in. All right, maybe I don't like where the part break is, so I'm gonna bring that to about there. I still like that surface undulation that we had going, so I'm gonna keep that. Also sketching a little bit lighter just because I know I'm gonna add some color and shading to this digitally, so trying to keep this fairly light. All right, so I might do something like that, and then trying to think if I was adding another button here. Maybe there's a little side button or something that we want to add right here. So if I'm holding this, maybe I can click and have some macro button, if you will. Mouse. All right. So I'm using the same pen here. The idea being I'm going to take the outline of my sketch now and just hit these lines a couple times. If you want to extend, you can do that. It's a technique that some people like to use, where if you're trying to define the outline of something, you can often, say if I'm drawing a square, I could draw it like this, or a box, I should say, so you don't hold me to a square. I could draw it like that, or I could draw 4 lines like this. This is a lot easier to do than to start and stop at the precise points. It's doable, but it's not as easy as just drawing like so. And then when you're ready, hit those lines a couple times, and now you have a much stronger representation of the shape. All right, so I'm going to put this sketch to the side. We're going to use this as our digital analog sketch in just a sec. Just clean up a little bit here. And we can even use this and turn it into multiple concepts digitally. So work smarter, not harder, but don't tell your professors. Okay, so that was our computer mouse. I think the next request was coffee maker that I was going to look at. I can either do the coffee maker, or I think the other was a shoe. All right, so I've done enough shoes that I can kind of just go for it, but I do want to point something out. If you do like sketching shoes, or again, anything ergonomic or whatever, it's important to kind of understand what's going in there. So if you look at a foot, something like this, typically, right? You can have a ball for your foot, big toe, whatever. All right, so you're gonna have a plane. I mean, unless you're having a 0 drop shoe, but it's a plane like so. Typically, you're going to be dealing with 3 planes, okay, for your shoe. And then your midsole and outsole kind of follow this flow, right? And your shoe would then encase the foot. Okay, so that being said, if I want to translate this, like I said, it's plane, 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 something like that, okay? And that translated into perspective is going to be something like this: plane, plane, plane. All right, so I kind of use this as a starting point. Like when I was learning to draw shoes, kind of thinking of it this way, right? Important, because now let's say we want to turn this into some sort of boot. Okay, maybe just some sort of hiking boot or something, right? Then I would need to understand again, okay, what does the top of this look like? What does it look like if I were to flip the shoe? You could look at your own shoe, but it's going to look something like this, right? Something like this. And if I attempt to simplify this shape, I end up with circle, ellipse, and some sort of transition between those two. Okay, so toward the front of the shoe, if I do kind of an egg shape like this, and then a circle in perspective is an ellipse, then if I just simply sketch the arch here, or the transition piece, like so, we now have the beginnings of the outsole for something like our boot here. Now, this is turning out to be more of a wedge, but we're going to roll with it. Okay. You can even take this shape on the bottom and drop it down if you want. Okay. If you're trying to determine the thickness. Okay. Something like that. And then just kind of take that in. If it's more of a boot, right, you could even take this line or this point, move up, and then come back down like so. Put your lugs on your tooling, is what this is called. Right, put our lugs on like so. And then, just like the mouse, I've got to decide, okay, what do each of these sections look like going down the shoe? If I were to sketch here, for example, maybe I have a section like this. I've got another one like this, and then we rise up and we've got, and this is me being very simplistic. Okay, but maybe these are my sections. So now, and we've got also a central plane, if you will, right here, right on that center point. All right, what does the center of the shoe look like? If I were to, even drawing straight lines can help you understand what's happening. Okay, even just drawing straight lines, let's see, back here, straight lines down. Okay, and then I can draw an ellipse like so. We now have the shape of a shoe. It's very stiff. Okay, it's very stiff, but we have that shape. And now I can take my pen here and at least get the silhouette. Now this wouldn't be flat. It's going to be kind of at an angle. So I'm going to angle that down and then account for our little notch here in my shoe. And of course the tongue of the shoe. All right. Our eye stays are, and you can start to add those details on the outside like so. I'm not going to render this one up. Just want to show you the construction and how to think about something like a shoe. All right, so I know that may have been fast, but again, it's the same principle that we used with the computer mouse, right? And then when you get to a certain point, you can kind of start thinking, okay, what do my laces look like? How do these things run on the surface? Again, drawing from observation is going to teach you, okay, what does this pattern look like when I'm putting laces down, for example? Just throw a quick shadow in here. So with enough practice, you get the general gist of it so that eventually, if I want to sketch a boot, I don't need that. And you guys can do this too once you practice enough. All right, so I don't need that underlay anymore because of practice and just time working these things out. I guess I'm not really using markers today, but we'll save our coloring for digital stuff. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask about these two processes. I'll do a quick coffee maker, and then we'll switch over to our Procreate flow, Procreate or Fresco, whichever you guys decide. So you can also do a lot with lines. You don't always need to, throw marker on everything. I try to do, I guess, in the interest of being efficient and all that, I try to do as little as possible with markers and colors these days. And I kind of save that for last steps if necessary. All right, so super quick, taking the same principle or idea, applying it a different way. This one's a little less rotated, but similar idea there. All right, let's do a quick coffee maker. So I'm going to rotate my page this way for a coffee maker. Okay, so let's see if I can remember. I actually use a French press, so I don't play with coffee makers very much. But let's say we're doing something that used pods. All right, we're just gonna go for it. So maybe this is where our pod goes in. All right, we just press that in. Around the corners here. I have no idea what this is going to look like, really. I'm just kind of going for it. So let's see. We need to put a cup underneath. So I need some sort of receptacle for a cup. There could be some interesting tension here in this transition. So I'm actually going to come back like so. And then let's see, let's pretend there's a cylinder here or something. Let's keep it more geometric. Little cylinder, maybe this is clear. There's a little clear chute, and then we've got some like bubble thing right there. Little part line on the top. Perhaps this flips up if needed or necessary. Do something like that. I'm gonna round this down and down to our single cup of joe. Like so there's that ellipse again, right? From our warm up. Notice the one on top is a little bit narrower than the one on the bottom. Okay, so once I have this here, now I'm gonna create a little base for our coffee maker. Just keep it simple. I ran out of space, but it's okay. because maybe I'd want this thing to be rounded on the front or something like that. Maybe. I guess on the back, we would need some sort of water tank, right? That's how these things work, I think. So maybe we can sketch that in. Some sort of reservoir for a coffee maker. We can fix that up. So quick idea. There we go. When in doubt, rough it out. I'm not going to overlay this one just because of time. So I'm just going to keep it sketchy, keep these lines going like so. All right. And now I'll just add some quick color, maybe just a little hint of a background here. Sorry, let me just check the chat. I'm missing some messages. Okay, so this is really bugging me that it's off the page, but I'm going to roll with it, guys. We're going to roll with it. All right. Okay, I'm going to use my cheap markers. So I do have Copic markers. I love using them, but I do try to preserve them when I can because they're hecka expensive. All right, so a little reservoir on the back. We'll assume it has some water in it or something. Water is not blue, as it turns out. So I'm just gonna shade in real quick, let that dry. And then let's get some occlusion on the corners, just a little shading to kind of show perhaps what's happening here. I like the idea of there being some sort of texture on this spout. Not sure what it is yet, but I like the idea of some texture. With sketching, you kind of have to pick your battles in a way. Like, okay, decide what's worth showing in your main view as opposed to creating a sketch, or maybe it's, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to jump into CAD and I'm going to figure out this portion, which is totally fine. All right, totally fine. This is going to be trying to think of, because I want to do some like part breakup for you guys, but I also don't want to make you guys think I'm a terrible designer. So I was like, I can throw some wood on or something, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. And these chart packs are a bit unpredictable. So let me do a quick color test. All right, I can live with that. So let's make the side here just a little bit darker. I'm going to use this number 5 chart pack and some waste paper. Okay. And if it's shiny, we're going to end up with things like reflections and artifacting happening on the side. All right, so I might leave some space for that. The reason I don't love chart packs is they tend to not be consistent in terms of color. So this one kind of looks green, but it's not supposed to be green. But it's okay. At least to me, it looks green. Maybe to you guys, it looks fine. All right, maybe something like that. So these white spots I'm leaving, okay, I want you guys to, when you get a chance, take a minute, hold something up that is shiny in your room under the light, and you'll notice that the light is reflected into that shiny top. So I'm trying to recreate that impression that maybe there's something on the side here, maybe there's something on the top. If this is angled, maybe it's catching a bit more of the light, things like that. So it's kind of what I'm trying to show there. You can always wait for your marker to dry, hit the spot again, and get a darker color. Markers are translucent, so you can build up in value as you work. Oh shoot, we already hit 10. Okay, I'm gonna have to render this mouse in 15 minutes, but it's fine. We'll do it. Digital is a lot easier in some ways. I promise. Okay. Coffee cup. Let's go with something pale. I guess we'll just do a yellow coffee cup. Why not? Why not? All right, so from the corners here, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Under the arm, a little bit darker. Pick up on some shadow core right here. Actually, yellow is a delightful color. It's hard to render in yellow, but it is delightful. All right, so maybe something like this. And let's get our coffee. So yeah, leaving little white spots like that can be helpful if you're trying to just show material, things like that. Or trying to think of a good way to say it, reflections in your form or shape. All right, so yeah, maybe there's some sort of texture here on this spout. We'll use our pen to kind of help us out here with our cavity. Like so. And because this marker is a little bit weird, I'm going to have to use the pen to help me out as well. All right, so something like that. This is in shadow, so I'll just use the pen instead of trying to mess with the marker. I might hit it with the marker just a little bit. One of the other reasons I like this Papermate Flare pen is it doesn't bleed with markers. So if you like to use, Pilot G2 or ballpoint pens won't bleed with an ad marker, but they will bleed with alcohol-based markers. So you'll want to be careful about what marker you choose to use. All right, so you may want to label this. Here's what's happening. I'm not writing real text, but maybe this is what's happening. And now we have fresh, hot, steamy coffee coming right out. But I do want to throw the computer mouse in, so I'm going to scan this in the background. You could take a picture with your device, but I'm just going to scan it because I have that ability here. Once my scanner warms up, and we can pull that in and add some quick color in Procreate, and I'll show you how to do that. Back in the day, you used to have to, man, I'm starting to sound old. Back in my day, you used to have to scan everything. So maybe it's a force of habit that I'm scanning right now, but yeah, everything was scanned. You can actually just take a picture and you'd be fine too. So, all right. So yeah, this is how wild the colors are on chart packs, again, which is why I don't love using them. They're just so, like, these two colors are so different, but supposedly from the same color family. They're both quote unquote neutral grays. Zebra McKee Care and Monami Plus Pen do not bleed. Good to know. I'll have to add that to my website or try them out. So thanks for the heads up. Papermate flares are just really cheap too. You get a box of 12 for like, I think $8 or something like that. Depending on where you shop, but I do like them. All right. Let's see. What am I missing now? Oh. Just a little bit of shading. So yeah, super quick marker sketch, just enough to say, here's a thing, here's how it works, here's how it looks. If you need some specifics around material or color, those are things you can call out specifically, right, in labeling, labeling parts and so forth. You can label that out. If there's a color or material spec, you can label that here. You know, this is Pantone 6C or something. If I want to label that, here's my water reservoir. All right, so quick sketch, but enough to say, here's the concept, right? Pretty simple, straightforward. All right, so I scan this in. Switch over to my iPad. Okay, there we go. So in Procreate now, I should be able to create a new document. Let's go with 17 by 11 because we love that size. And I'm going to go to paste. Okay, it's going to paste it from my computer. Do I use a textured screen protector? I do. I use a cheap screen protector that I found on Amazon. So I've taken that layer, duplicated it. I'm going to flip it horizontally, scale it down, put it in the same sketch, change my blending mode here, this is a really important step on each of these. We want to change the blending mode to multiply. And I believe Wesley is recording this, so if I'm going too fast, hopefully he's generous and shares it with you. All right, so I've got 2 sketches on a page. Boom, we've got almost a sketch page here. It's kind of crazy, right? So much like a musical composition, you don't want everything having the same beat, like being super loud or commanding your attention. So I like to try and mix things up a bit. I do have a brush kit that I created. It's available on my website. It's about, well, I have 2. Well, depending on what you want to use. I have Photoshop and Procreate brushes, but I do have some brushes here I can use. So I'm going to use this. Let's see, should I use the dirty stencil? I think I'll use that. Okay, because I may want to add some lines to this, right? I may want to come in and say, here's a little cast shadow area, right, on this mouse. And then on this one on the top, I might say, you know what? I want to change this design so it doesn't feel like it's the same thing. I want people to know I did tons of work on this project. Well, we can do a couple of things. So if I want to change the shape of this sketch now, I can go to warp, for example, and I can start to manipulate the mouse. Maybe this one has less curve in the base and it's a little bit longer or something. Cool. So now it has a slightly different profile, but I may also want to change, you know, the part breakup. Okay, how is this one broken up part-wise? Maybe I have a main section in the middle. Maybe I have something like this that cuts over. Ooh, now it's different. Okay, so simple, you can do simple things like that to leverage what you've already done to help you move really quickly. So there I've created another concept in like 5 seconds, right? Rough enough, but it's a smaller sketch, so it's not like I need all the detail and all that, right? But I have 2 different ideas. So now, right, just keeping this loose, I have 2 layers above another layer. So when I'm working digitally, what I try to do, and I'll show you here, I'm going to switch brushes to the stencil. So in terms of my layer order, It's something like this. So there's going to be top, middle, middle, and then bottom. All right. So on the very top, I'm going to have things like effects, highlights, stuff like that, or little special things. This is really the highlight, or sorry, my bad. This is going to be sketch layer. This is going to be highlight and shadow. And then this is going to be solids. All right. So if I was rendering this mouse and I wanted to do it very quickly, I would pick my base color. All right, let's do something weird, like something that Google might pick. So I'm gonna pick this weird yellowish color. Let's go with a weird yellowish mouse. So I've got this weird yellowish color, so mustard. So I'm gonna pick this and now fill in with a solid. So you can either paint it in all the way, right? Or just do the outline. If you're working in Procreate, tap your color, drag it in, and now it's filled. Make a new layer. So each of these represents kind of a stack of tasks. Okay, so now for the control wheel, I might say, I'm going to use some gray here. So that's on top, right? And to save time, I don't have to erase what's underneath. So now I'm going to create another layer and say, what if I wanted to do, let's see if I can find a nice complementary yellow or something. Yeah. Okay. So the front, maybe we'll go a little bit lighter with the front. In fact, because I painted the whole thing in, I can tap, hit select, and now I've essentially masked my shading. So I can just go nuts, right? Just across here on my part line. Like so, I can just kind of go nuts. Shade this in or fill, whatever you want to do. This is on a new layer. Should be. Okay, yeah, it's on a new layer. Right, and I could turn that on or off, which is important when you start working professionally. You want to be able to turn things on and off, because one thing you will find is that clients like to change their minds. I just finished a project and it's video, but I did 2 reshoots, hours and hours of edits, finally got to a point where they're like, okay, we're happy. But if I didn't work in a modular enough way, that would have been a nightmare for sure. All right, so the rest of this, I think I'm pretty much done with my color at this point. I'm just going to throw in quick shadow stuff here because we did map out more shadow. So I'm just going to block this in, right? It's not so much what's the word? A correct calculated shadow, but more so just to ground the sketch. Okay, on the page. I'm essentially suggesting that my light source is coming from this direction. So if I have a light bulb here, I'm saying my light source is coming this way. So I know on my sketch, I'm going to get a nice, where did you go? Oh, I'm going to get nice highlight right about here on my sketch. Okay, I'm going to get some highlights here because it's dropping down. Okay, this is facing up toward the light, and the viewer, I'm going to get highlights. Okay, as we go away from the light, that's where I'm going to get shadow core. That's going to be my highlight. This is shadow. And over here, it's going to be shadow as well. All right, so that's how I'm thinking about it. So I'll just turn this way down for you so it's still there and you can see it, and we'll do a super quick shade. So above everything except for the wheel at this point, I'm going to take some black here. This is just a quick and dirty way to do it. If you switch your blending mode to something like multiply and you have the right brush like I do. So I made these brushes to make my life somewhat simple. So I've got this crisp air highlighter, for example, that I can use. That one's a little bit too intense, so I'm going to jump to the soft highlighter. And my goal here is to just get a nice shadow core on the opposite side of the mouse. All right, to kind of help this feel like it's wrapping. All right. If you need to adjust the opacity, 2-finger tap on the layer and slide will help you do that. And this airbrush I like specifically because it has a nice core to it and some good fall off. So now in that spot where I want to show a highlight, I'm going to create a new layer and just start to paint with white. Okay, now you can play with the blending mode on a layer like this. So I could go to tap on that little letter, go to add, and you can get these really intense highlights and play with it. So it's a bit more complementary to the color that's underneath. We can even turn off our layer there. And now you can kind of see that starting to pop a little bit more. So I would say don't overdo it, be a bit careful, but you can use add to help you out there. And then let's see, I'm going to shade in my shadow area. I'm just going to take a light gray, jump to multiply, drop the opacity, and we can use a variety of brushes, whatever you want to use. I'm going to use my real marker brush here. This is a marker brush that I came up with that behaves a lot like a real marker. So you can blend, you can increase value just like you would on a real marker. But I like it because it helps me at least keep things sketchy. All right, so I'm gonna just hit that a couple times. If you want it to be a little darker, you can do that too. Jump to the front here, also in shadow. All right, just like that. And now around the part lines, okay, I'm gonna go a little bit darker here with this brush right around the part lines for things like this button. So we have a nice cast shadow in there, just like that. Maybe a tiny one. Right on this part line. Maybe just a tiny cast shadow. And let's go to our wheel now, and I'll just shade that in with this marker brush. So a little bit of a shadow core, maybe get the side, something like that. All right, super easy. Let's get a little highlight action in there, right there, boom. Okay, so super quick shade. And now, because everyone loves a good speckle, I'm gonna add some speckle to our mouse. Let's make sure this is on a new layer. I'm gonna use the speckle brush, not the banana speckle today. All right, so make this nice and big, like so. And maybe on a new layer in the shadowed spot. Gonna increase that a bit. So we're nice and textured. Go ahead and erase what I don't need. Two finger tap, slide the opacity down. Two finger tap, lower the opacity just enough that the speckle shows up, but it's not overpowering. And there you go, super quick render. There's a lot of stuff we could do too. For example, if we want to bring out the other concept a little bit, I can jump to this soft air highlighter, for example, nice gray, and just kind of hit this a few times in the right spots. And that's going to give it enough presence on the page. And then if I want to do maybe some lighting effects or something of that sort, let's jump to this round brush. I know I'm going super fast, guys, but again, hopefully you'll get the chance to rewatch this. See if you can integrate some of it. But let's say I did have some blue background, something like this on my mouse page. Okay, let's drag this to the very back. So I'm just gonna tap this layer, drag it all the way down to say there, and let's do a little cleanup because I wasn't as careful on this mouse above. It's a little bit of cleanup here. like so. Okay. And in terms of effects, if you wanted to go the extra mile and get real fancy, you could do something like this. Take, say this soft air highlighter, make it small, pick this blue. We'll go to a new layer, and I'm just going to give this a little bit of rim light on the edge of the mouse. The side, maybe a little bit on the wheel and toward the front here. All right, just some to help that pop. If you want to play with blending modes, you can do that as well. Something like add, right? You can kind of see how that blue now kind of bleeds into the mouse a bit. All right. So quick demo on how you can take something you sketched on paper. If you're more comfortable with that, bring it into your iPad. You could also take a picture using the camera on your tablet. If you want to take a picture of your sketch page. The scan for me just reliably brings it in where all the levels are adjusted and it's reasonably cleaned up. But it's a pretty quick process to getting to that point where you do have what I would consider to be a decent presentation sketch. So I know it was a super quick presentation. We did a lot of stuff. There's a lot I didn't cover. So again, if you feel the need and you feel like you're missing out on something, you can always visit the website. There's tons of videos covering a range of topics. If you're really into architecture or nature or sci-fi stuff, it's there. Lots of marker demos as well. Even something like this, you could take a picture of it, put it into your iPad and make it even better. Like if I wasn't happy, well, I'm not happy with the way the marker colors turned out here, I could throw that into Procreate, make some tweaks, some changes, you know, fix this bottom corner, things like that. We covered, you know, quick techniques for drawing boundaries on things so you're not frustrated and stressed about getting it perfect. Fundamental construction of organic shapes, and we finished that one up. And of course, quick warm-up techniques, not in vain, all stuff that's going to help you draw better. So thank you for inviting me, Wesley. It's been fun. I'm going to turn the time back over to you.